I'm Jenny Hall. Welcome to my YouTube channel and blog. Today I am making another card project and I want to call this You Can Do It. A lot of people have approached me and let me know that they have a problem with watercoloring, and maybe if they worked into a little more controlled surface or a controlled medium, that it would be more successful to them. So, crafters that have watercolor challenge, this video is dedicated to you. I feel that the medium that I use influences the success of my watercoloring. So in more simple words, if you use the right ink and the right kind of paper, then it'll work better. What I'm using today to be able to get the image that I want, kind of the look of the watercoloring, is a certain kind of paper called Bristol paper. Bristol paper is really close to watercolor paper, but it's not watercolor paper. It has a more smooth surface, yet it still resists the water absorption. So what I can do is I can put down ink or marker or water brush, anything, and it doesn't absorb as fast on the Bristol paper. And the Bristol paper allows whatever kind of liquid I'm using to just kind of slide around and get slowly absorbed into a dry area. That works really well for the effect that I am trying to achieve in my card making. You could try this to see if the look is something that you are trying to get, because if you use different paper, then you're going to have a different look. The Stampin' Up markers are not watercolor markers. They are a dye ink that is the same water-based fluid that is in the stamp pads and the re-inkers from Stampin' Up. And there's no reason you cannot use them to achieve a watercolored look. So if you try this technique today, then I would really love for you guys to share your work and show me what you came up with and if the technique worked for you. So starting out with Bristol paper, on this particular object, I stamped with a soft suede stamp pad. And I stamped in brown rather than black because I wanted to keep the neutral tones running throughout the entire project. I'm also planning to color in the mouse brown, and the brown stamp will lend itself better to a brown mouse than it will in a different form. So the way that I achieve the watercoloring is I first apply to a dry surface. I have to make sure that the ink and the paper has dried completely before I started coloring. That's why I use the heat gun. So I applied the marker to a specific area that was going to be the dark part of the image, and this way I can have a natural shading effect. I then take the water brush and pull that ink out into the dry, empty space in a particular section. For example, if we want to say that I am applying color into the mouse's shirt, then I'm going to put the color strategically in certain areas, which will allow some of that coloring to be darker. So anytime you apply any kind of like whether it's watercolor paint or whether it's marker, if you apply that to a certain area of paper, it's going to start absorbing right away. But it depends on what color of paper, what kind of paper, as to how quickly that it will absorb. This Bristol paper will allow me to put the color down and then get my water brush and start moving some of that color immediately away from where I touched the paper. If I just put it into the natural shaded areas, then what it'll do is it'll allow me to keep the darker part where it normally would fall in nature, and then be able to move out a diluted color into the rest of the space. For example, as I'm coloring this mouse's trousers, I applied the marker only as like an outline in certain areas, and then I used that water brush to pull out the color into the rest of the area. I did not want his trousers to be one solid color. I wanted them to kind of have a shaded look. So down around the legs, you can see that the color is definitely darker. I'm doing the same thing with the mouse's sweater here. I did not completely coat his sweater in color from the marker. I just put it in places where it would look a little rippled in real life. Because whenever a piece of clothing is worn, especially a bulky sweater, it's going to kind of be bunched up in little places here and there. So in order to get that natural falling look of the fabric, or knitted, or however this little mouse is supposed to be wearing his garment, I just wanted it to look a bit more natural. If you notice, I am applying color, and then once it starts to dry up a little bit, I will go back in and apply additional color to a certain area. It is easier to add more color in than it is to take it away. Even with a water resist kind of technique where you use a sprayer, or you use some kind of a water droplet or spritz, you can take some color back up, but it's not going to completely take everything up. So my word to the wise is less is more, and then go and add a little more where you feel that it's necessary. The shading on the mouse himself is very simple. I kind of added a little more concentration of color into the natural curves of each part of his body. Around his face, I knew that it was going to be a little contoured, and so I made sure that I applied the marker in those places and then pulled it out into the rest of him. I'm using very simple colors to color the image in today, and I didn't want to have too broad of a palette of coloring, because I wanted the colors to echo and to also complement the card base and the background papers that I have applied to the card base. I'm just putting some scribbly lines underneath the mouse, which gives a grounded look. Otherwise, it would kind of look like he was standing out and not really have a perspective, be hanging out into outer space. So that's all the little scribbly marks are underneath. It's just like a perspective mark. I will go in after he's dried and colored to add some gold glitter glue on the little spots of the ornament that are like little highlights on the ornament, just to give a little bit of a sparkle to the ornament. I do suggest that you wait until your image is completely dry before working with it to complete your card. There could be some kind of, it's just sometimes I've noticed that if I get a little too anxious, then I might get a little extra smudge on my cards. So it's nice to exercise patience. The washi tape is from Affectionately Yours washi tape set. I like the copper that is complementary with the polka dots on this piece of designer series paper. The green designer series paper is from Serene Scenery. It's one of the nice papers that has a pattern on the back. I'm kind of going with the theme of Old Olive. It to me is not so much of a Christmassy color, but the mouse, I think, is able to kind of show the Christmas theme on his own. And the colors of the mouse and the stamping being in a neutral tone kind of give an overall effect of it is a Christmas card, even though it may not have traditional red and green colors. I'm using a lot of snail adhesive on this project just because it's going to be easy for me to use snail. I could use liquid glue, but snail to me just doesn't mess up as much. But I am using the fine tip glue pen to adhere the sequins. The sequins that I'm using on this project are from Bright's Sequins Assortment from Stampin' Up. And I did strategically use these because they complement the colors. it's the same green that echoes through. I chose a little star because there is a star on the stamped image. And the red complements the sweater for the little mouse. It is all part of the design. Thank you guys for joining me for another card making tutorial. Today I invite you to visit my blog at jennystampsup.com, and there you will find a new card idea every day. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.